Hey, you want some Superwrap? Looking for some Superwrap? You want to spray some Superwrap? Hey, you want some Superwrap?
Hey, what's up guys? Alex from Superwrap here. Today we're going to be teaching you guys how to spray properly. So this wheel we have right here has already been prepped. If you want to watch a video on how to prep wheels, click on the link around here. And so one of the main things to remember when spraying Superwrap is you got to spray in the right temperature and you got to spray in acceptable humidity levels. So check this out right here. Follow this and you should be good to go. So the wheel we have in front of us is in relatively good condition. There aren't too many big scuffs or scrapes or anything like that. And a lot of you guys ask us, can you Bondo, can you primer wheels before applying Superwrap? And the answer to that is pretty simple. Superwrap needs to be on something smooth. Anything that's too porous or grippy, you'll have peelability issues. And so you can definitely use Bondo or primer, but you're gonna need to come down and wet sand it so it's a smooth finish. And again, you won't have the product gripping on, and so it'll remain peelable. So make sure you're sanding up to about 1500 grit. Wet sanding definitely helps. So just make sure it's nice and smooth and then you're ready to apply the Superwrap. So today we're gonna be spraying Marinello Red on this wheel. Marinello Red requires a base coat, which is Arctic White. Most of our colors do require a base coat, so make sure you get the right information before purchasing. Our wheel kits, accessory kits, and mirror kits come pre-built with the appropriate base coat, so that'll make things a lot easier for you guys when you go and purchase your product. So throughout this video, you're gonna hear us talk about light coats and wet coats. You want to take the time to show you what the difference is between the both. A light coat is typically used at the beginning of spraying, so our first coat will be a light coat, and that's for checking for surface contamination. And the wet coat is very important. Getting a proper wet coat throughout the entire application process is very important because with Superwrap, you're gonna be wanting to build up a lot of thickness. And so if you're not doing wet coats properly, you're not gonna end up with enough thickness, and you're not gonna end up with a very high gloss. So again, a light coat is gonna be at the very beginning, but you wanna transition over to wet coats because wet coats give you that thickness and they give you the gloss. So we're gonna go ahead and jump into it and show you and give you examples of what a light coat is and what a wet coat is. A quick tip when spraying, you're gonna wanna maintain that 8 to 12 inches away from the surface. And when spraying, don't start spraying on the surface. Say this is the wheel, you don't wanna start spraying on the wheel. You wanna start your strokes off the wheel and end them off the wheel. So just like this. So this replicates a nice light coat. You're not getting full opacity on that coat. And as you can see, we started off of the cardboard, and that would be the wheel, and we finished off the wheel. So again, you're making sure here that you're not getting full coverage, but this lets you see whether there's surface contamination right there on the wheel. And we're gonna get into what you need to do if you do have surface contamination, but this is a good example. So your first coat is gonna be nice and light like this. Another thing to be sure of is when doing light coats, you're gonna wanna go relatively fast. If you go too slow, although you're misting it, you're not going very close or heavy. If you stay too long on the same spot, that's when it starts to get heavy. So there, you're starting to see that difference. We're gonna jump over and see what overlapping wet coats look like. So spraying wet coats is gonna be the most important thing because that's, again, what's gonna build your thickness, which is very, very important for the durability, but it's also very important for the gloss. So the thicker you go on your coats without dripping, the better the finish is gonna be. So we're gonna go ahead and show you what a nice, thick, even coat is, just to give you an example of, again, what kind of coverage you should expect to be looking for. So again, starting off of the surface. So as you see, with the thick coats, we're gonna start to overlap each coat. And as you can see here, we're getting full saturation without having the product want to drip. If you go too slow or too heavy or too close, what's gonna happen is you're gonna start to build a lot of thickness, but in the end, you're gonna start to see these runs, these drips, and that's no bueno, guys. So again, we're gonna come on this panel down here, give you guys a better example. A nice even stroke gets you full color saturation, and again, you're not ending up with these very Halloween looking drips right here. We're just about ready to throw down our first coat. The first coat is gonna be a light coat that's gonna help us see whether there's any surface contamination. So we're gonna go right ahead with it. You're gonna shake the can for a minute. All right, that's nice and mixed up. So the next step is gonna be test spraying beside the surface. So this is gonna make sure that the nozzle is spraying right, that it's not spitting, that it's not doing anything weird. So what I typically do is just hit the side of the tire. Since we've masked it off properly, no issue whatsoever. And the spray pattern looks great. So we're ready for our first tack coat. Here we go. So that should do it for our first light coat. At this point, you're going to be looking really closely to see if there's any kind of contamination which shows itself as fish eyes. So that's going to be little micro dots where the product just doesn't want to sit because of that surface contamination. This typically can happen because of, say, excess tire shine or other cleaning products on the wheel that just don't mesh well with our product, and at that point you're going to start to see it. But what we've got here so far is a nice clean prep, and so nothing's showing up. So we're going to let this dry for the 10 minutes, get back to it in about 10 minutes, everything's going to be 10 minutes. So we've laid down our first light coat, we've checked for surface contamination, and we've waited the full 10 minutes. Now it's time to get heavier on the coats, build up some thickness. I'm going to use a can gun for all my coats. At this point it makes it just a lot easier on your wrist when you're spraying, so let's get started. So when you get heavier with the coats, what I typically suggest is finding a repeatable pattern that's going to make it easier for you to track where you're at with the wheel, what you've already sprayed, what you haven't. What I typically do is I go on the outside barrel first, then I hit the spokes from the outside in, and then I finish on the center hub. When doing the spokes, it's very important to remember to hit the sides of the spokes. That's typically one of the places where there's not enough product. And so what I typically do is I start from the valve stem and circle around, hitting every angle of every spoke. And that way you'll be sure you have enough product built up and you won't have any peeling issues or durability issues down the line. Last thing before we get going on these heavier coats is to make sure you're spraying 8 to 12 inches from the surface. And if ever you're wondering what 8 to 12 inches is, an aerosol is about 8.5 inches. So give yourself about that distance, you're good to go. So let's get into it, nice and heavy on these coats. So we just finished up the last 6th coat of the base coat. We're ready to start going on the Marinello red. So we're going to start with a nice light first coat. Again, 15 minutes between coats. Let's start building them up. Alright, so 15 minutes later, we've done our first light coat. Now we're going to start getting heavier on the Marinello red. So you know the drill, 15 minutes, ready for our next coat. You're going to notice we're starting to get a bit heavier. We're going to get a little bit more of that color coverage. So this is where we're going to start to really see this color start popping. Alright, so when it comes to more complex wheel designs, like say something like this where you have a 5-spoke that's split into a 10-spoke, the distance between the spokes is actually relatively small. And so what you want to make sure is you're getting enough product in between that crevice, in that crack, again to build up enough coverage, because when it comes to Superwrap, the name of the game really is building up even 10 coats all across the wheel. So when you're spraying, keep that in mind, and if you have to, add an extra stroke here and there, just make sure that you're hitting those hard to reach areas. So here we are, the last coat, 6th coat of the Marinello red. So as you can see, we've already hit our full color coverage, which is going to add this last coat to make sure we have the proper thickness. So let's get into it. As you just saw in that last coat, one important thing to do is to make sure you're hitting the outside of the barrel heel, just on this edge. That's one place that tends to not have enough coverage, and again, that can cause a little bit of lifting and chipping on the outside, which you start to hit it with a pressure washer, and that's when it starts to lift. So again, just make sure you're coming and hitting this outside edge every time you spray, and then you'll have a nice even coat, no premature peeling. So we've applied our last coat of color coat. It's been 6 coats, we have our full color coverage, and 10 minutes has passed. Now there are 3 options. If you bought our standard gloss wheel kit, at this point you're ready to peel this off. You've got a high gloss durable finish. If you've opted for our Superwrap clear, which gives you added durability, added gloss, now would be the time to go ahead and apply that. Again, you need 10 minutes in between coats, just like the color coat. So you're gonna throw on 2 coats of the Superwrap clear, and that's gonna give you added durability and extra gloss. And if you opted for our frozen kit, then you're gonna have to wait a full hour before applying the frozen top coat, at which point you're gonna be applying 1 light and 1 wet coat of that to get a nice frozen finish. In this situation, we're gonna go ahead with the Superwrap clear coat. So I'm gonna shake this up, and we're gonna get started on our first coat. So I just wanna say one last time, very important to make sure you have a clear spray pattern on the wheel. That way, when it comes to a clear product like the Superwrap Clear, or even on the last coat to the color coat, when you can't really tell what you've sprayed and what you haven't, that clear pattern comes and makes sure that you're building an even coat around the entire wheel. So again, like I said, I start from the valve stem and work my way around, and that makes sure that you've hit the entire circumference of the wheel. And again, that makes sure you have enough product, making that you won't have any premature peeling, making it easier to remove, and it's gonna just make sure you have durability across the entire wheel. So we're gonna jump into it right now. So we're just about done now with spraying. We've laid down our 6 coats of base, our 6 coats of color, and our 2 coats of the Superwrap Clear. Now that we're ready to peel, one suggestion is grabbing a card or a razor blade and creasing around the rim, just like we did when preparing the wheel. Again, making sure that none of the product has bridge between the tape and the rim. So we're gonna go ahead and do that and then start peeling this tape off. So we just finished unmasking the tire and we've added the center cap. We suggest waiting 6 to 12 hours before remounting the wheels and a full 5 days before hitting with a pressure washer or using any kind of cleaning products on it. At this point, if you have any more questions about the application of Superwrap, hit up our support team. They're always willing to help out. And from there, just keep on burning those tires. Would you look at it? Would you just look at it? It's gloss as hell. Luckily, we have something called a can gun. The easiest thing to do is just to have it handy. So I'm going to use a can gun to just make it easier on myself, and we'll be able to just get going on this. Can gun, make it a whole lot easier. Can gun, it makes it a whole lot easier on us at that point.